There's a story of the Alter Rebbe who brought his young grandson, who would eventually grow up to be the Tzemach Tzedek, to Cheder for the first time. And the Alter Rebbe asked his teacher that the first thing he should teach him is Parsha's Vayikra, this week's Parsha. When the Tzemach Tzedek saw the first pasuk, Vayikra El Moshe, he asked his grandfather, why is the Aleph in Vayikra a small Aleph, a smaller letter, smaller than the average letters in Torah? The Alter Rebbe got serious and answered the Tzemach Tzedek. You know why Vayikra has a small Aleph? Adam Harishon had incredible milas. He was created, he was the handiwork of God himself. The Medrash even says that Adam Harishon was smarter than the Malachim, than the angels. Yet Adam Harishon's amazing qualities got to his head, and he had a downfall. That's why about Adam Harishon it says in Divrei Hayamim, one of the books in Ksuvim that recounts biblical chronology, it says Adam Harishon's name with a very big aleph, bigger than the average letters in Torah, representing his bigness, how great he was, and that the greatness got to his head. But Moshe Rabbeinu also had incredible milas. However, that didn't get to his head and inflate him. It crushed him and made him feel small, realizing that if someone else had the incredible gifts he was gifted with at birth, if someone else was born into his incredible lineage, how they would have achieved much more than he did in his life. That's why the Aleph in Vayikra is small, because this was Moshe Rabbeinu's humility. And that was the Alter Rebbe's answer to his grandson. Now, this story begs many questions, and I'll mention a couple of them. First of all, the Tzemach Tzedek's question to his grandfather was about Moshe Rabbeinu. Why is the Vayikra El Moshe, the Aleph, small? So what's the answer? The answer is a very simple one-liner. Why is the Aleph in Vayikra small? Because Moshe Rabbeinu felt small. He felt very humble. Why does the Alter Rebbe need to bring in Adam Harishon to contrast and say, Adam Harishon has a big Aleph, by the way? You know why? Because his milas got to his head. Why bring up Adam Harishon and say something bad about him if it's not necessary to explain the small Aleph of Vayikra? What does it add to the explanation? And second of all, when we're explaining Moshe Rabbeinu's humility, why don't we just say he had incredible milas, but he didn't let it get to his head. He remained humble. Why does the Alter Rebbe go further and say that not only did Moshe Rabbeinu feel humble, he felt that if someone else had these qualities, they'd do an even better job than he did? Why does it need to go that far? Seemingly, it's a accurate answer to say Vayikra has a small aleph because he was humble. Why do we need to say the extent of his humility, and that if someone else had these milas, he would be even greater than he was? So the Rebbe answers that the Alter Rebbe wasn't there to give a technical answer to his grandson. Why does Vayikra have a small aleph? He wanted to teach his grandson the way a Jew needs to view himself. So that's why he brought up Adam Harishon. He said Adam Harishon had incredible milas. He was God's handiwork, and he noticed that about himself. And you know what? That's a good thing. A Jew needs to realize the incredible gifts he's been given. Every Jew, it says, has a nitzutz, has a spark, has some of the DNA of Adam Harishon from before Chet Etzadas, from before the original sin, the perfect human being created by Hashem, and every Jew has a part of that and needs to see that in themselves. It's holy and important. That's why the Alter Rebbe was bringing up the story about Adam Harishon, because it wasn't such a bad thing. It was bad that it got to his head, but it's a holy thing for a Jew to realize that he's an asset, and the qualities, the deep, rich qualities that Hashem gave him. However, together with that, he needs to realize that these are gifts that Hashem gave him. These aren't his own handiwork. It can't get to his head. He needs to, as many milas as one has, that needs to equally humble him. I saw one time a mashal for this, that if someone's in not such great light, they can't see all the specks of dust in the air. But if someone goes to the top of a mountain where it's on a sunny day where they're elevated, they could see clearly, there's great light outside, then they're going to start seeing all the specks of dust that are around them in the air, representing that if the higher someone is and the greater someone's sight is in life, the more they should be noticing their own chesroinus. So that's an interesting mashal of realizing that the more qualities one has, the more they should humble themselves. But it's important to notice your qualities. However, it's important that these qualities, to couple noticing the gifts Hashem gave you with true humility. And the Rebbe says, you know what true humility is? Not only realizing that my gifts aren't mine, they're God's gift to me, and I didn't do anything to earn them. Real humility isn't the way you view yourself. That's one step of humility. Real humility is if you could view others as greater than you. Now that's very, very hard. There's a famous joke about the rabbi who gets up and explains how much of a nothing he is, and the president gets up and says how much of a nothing he is, and then the schnorrer from the back of shul, the beggar from the back of shul, gets up to say what a nothing he is, and the rabbi jabs at the president and says, look who thinks he's a nothing. We all work on ourselves to not let ourselves get to our heads, but true humility is noticing, can someone else can I view them, can I see their milas too? I was one time driving on a freeway, and sometimes I was thinking that sometimes it's hard to tell when exactly you're going straight, because sometimes you go up, sometimes you go down, and then if you go on a not so steep decline or not so steep incline, sometimes you feel like you're going straight. And is there any way of objectively telling if I'm going uphill, downhill, or straight? And the answer is, look at the car in front of you. If the car in front of you is above you, then you're going uphill. If you view the car in front of you as below you, then you're going downhill. And that has its applications in Avodas Hashem too. That it's important and holy that we be confident and know the gifts that we've been given, but at the same time, it's important to couple that with true humility, that these gifts aren't mine. And Jews around me have beautiful gifts too, and maybe they'd be able to do more with, had they have what I had. Have a good Shabbos.